Yes, I. Greetings in the mighty name of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie the First, you know? So, you don't know as we talk about history in East Kingston, Rockfort, Warwick, you don't know. We talk about the good and the bad same way. The significant and the insignificant. You don't know a part of it. You see. Today we will talk about an episode in our history where shook us all. Where a lot of you might have, not experienced or will or hopefully never will experience anything like that. The form of animosity from the legal authority or the legal institutions in Jamaica and also the security forces. You get what I say? There was a terrible atmosphere in regards to East Kingston during this period of the 80s. See? Anyway, I have a quote from the Jamaica Observer and jog the eye them memory. See? And hopefully the eye them can relive and will communicate and share some of the experience them we go through during that period. See? Yeah, more or less. Listen on. His lifeless body, partially nude from the waist down and lying spread-eagled on the green grass of his Springfield-on-Sea residence in the wee hours of a beastly November morning, threw the legal fraternity into a state of utter numbness and shock. The man who had fallen prey to this ugly murder on November 14, 1987, was the acting registrar of the Supreme Court of Jamaica, 47-year-old Derek Hugh, resident magistrate and a former Crown Counsel in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. Hugh's murder typified callousness. The court heard how he was forced to open his bedroom door near dawn, then dragged unceremoniously outside by one of two masked gunmen who delivered the chilling message that he had been contracted to kill him and ordered him to go downstairs to get his passport. The court later heard that when Hugh reportedly begged the gunman to allow him to put on his underwear, the spine-chilling response was, "Come on, man. Where you going, you don't need no clothes." As graphic details of the murder unfold, the court also heard that after receiving 2 gunshots and in the throes of death, Hughes hurled himself from the first floor through a closed louver window, shattering the glass and ending up on top of a vehicle parked under the window before hitting the ground. The man accused of Hughes' murder was Trevor Bennett, O.C. Bulgin, a laborer from East Kingston who appeared before Justice Lyde Ellis, now deceased, and a jury in the Circuit Court Division of the Gun Court in Kingston. The trial lasted 3 days. The murder had led the morning news, bringing several members of the legal fraternity to the crime scene. Most expressed shock and consternation. Early on the scene was the Deputy Commissioner in charge of crime, Sam McKay, and with him a team of investigators. Hugh, who was well known as a hard worker and a man who liked to deal with matters with dispatch, took over as acting registrar of the Supreme Court at a time when there was a large backlog of cases. He was known for taking home files for review in order to get things done faster. Speculation was rife that in one case he had opened Pandora's box and that this had led to his demise. On the evening before the gunmen came calling, Hughes was reportedly in high spirits, and staff recalled that he left office wearing his customary beaming smile. No one could have known that it would be the last time they would see him alive. The house at Springfield-on-Sea, a faint but distinctive relic of old East Kingston, was a 2-story structure facing the sea. Hugh occupied the upper floor while his mother and sister occupied the ground floor. A balcony on the upper floor overlooked the blue Caribbean Sea. One could sit and enjoy the sea breeze and the sheer tranquility of the moment from that lofty perch. The circuit court heard evidence from David Wilby, a visitor who had arrived in the island the very day of Hugh's murder and who had been asleep in the room upstairs adjoining that of Hugh's, had been awakened around 3 a.m. by two masked gunmen in his room. One had a gun at his back and the other had a gun at his ear. The two gunmen flipped him over on the bed. Then one of them remarked, "No man, this is the wrong man." They pulled him off the bed and marched him to Hugh's room, where Hugh was cajoled to open the door. Bilby and Hugh were ordered to lie on the floor, and Bennett left to guard them. According to Wilby, the other gunman left and returned shortly after with Mistress Hugh, the mother of the deceased. She was crying and begging them not to hurt her son. She fell on the floor. Bennett threatened to shoot her. Bennett threatened to shoot Mrs. Hughes if she did not keep quiet, to which the other gunman replied, "All right, man, we get paid to kill him already." This man then left the room with Hugh. Wilby told the judge and jury he noticed that Bennett then began searching the drawers in the room looking for money and jewelry. During this process, the witness observed that the mask kept slipping from his face, thus enabling witness to get a good look at his face. Suddenly, gunshot rang out from downstairs. Bennett, he said, jumped over him and Mr. Hughes and fled the scene. He later pointed out Bennett at an identification parade as being one of the two masked gunmen who entered Hughes' home that morning. The forensic pathologist, Dr. Royston Clifford, who performed post-mortem examination on Hughes' body, testified that upon examination he found an entrance to the right ear and too graphic. I don't want to read it on the thing. You get what I say? Seeing which of which is just curve left and ascending to the right and nudging the stuff. I don't want to read it on the thing. Seeing, in his opinion, the witness told the court that was due to the gunshot wounds. The police fingerprint expert testified that they found prints and some glass louver braid removed from an upstairs window of the house, which was found resting on the roof. These fingerprints on the louver braid matched those of Trevor Bennett. On December 21st, 1987, Detective Sergeant Oswald Airy told the court he saw Bennett at the Flying Squad headquarters in Kingston. He had known him for some 9 years. Bennett indicated to him he wanted to tell him something. He took Bennett to the office in charge of the investigation. Superintendent Donald Brown, now ACP, retired, and in the presence of Senior Superintendent Isidore Dick Hibbert, now ACP in charge of crime, retired, a statement was taken from Bennett. The defense, represented by Terence Ballantyne and Paul Beswick, objected to this statement being admitted into evidence after voir dire proceedings and in-camera trial. The trial judge ruled the statement admissible. It was tendered in evidence by none other than Miss Paula Llewellyn QC, now Director of Public Prosecution, who marshaled the Crown's case. In the statement, Bennett related how he had been walking in a gully about 2 a.m. in April 1987, when he saw one Lukey and told him he had no money. Lukey told him he knew where they could go to get some, and he decided to go. Lukey had a gun and told him he was going to a house at the beach where some foreigners were staying. He walked with Lukey to the premises. Lukey went onto the roof and he removed some louver blades and they both entered the building. He did not admit in the statement to having had a gun, but he agreed in the main with Wilby testimony as to what transpired inside the house. He also gave the name of the other two men who he said participated in the murder, and where they could be located. As a result of the information gleaned from Trevor Bennett, a team of flying squad detectives were dispatched by Superintendent Hibbert to Arnett Garden to capture the named suspect, Lukey Campbell. It was believed Campbell could supply the much needed information about the person or persons who hired, contracted the gunman to murder Hugh. Hibbert later told the court that Campbell was killed in a confrontation with the police. Hugh's sister recounted for the court how after she heard a commotion in the house early that fateful morning, she opened her bedroom door and saw a gunman holding her brother by his neck. She started to shout and the gunman fired at her and the shot caught her on both arms. Her brother was shot by the gunman and jumped through a window, shattering the glass door. He landed on a van parked under the window, then fell beside the van. Deceased. The gunman escaped. In his defense, Bennett repeated a lot of what he had said in the statement given to the police. He added that he had been set up due to the fact that he had informed on some of his colleagues to the police in a previous robbery case. He had lost his job and therefore had no money for his baby's food as a result of his being held by the police at that time. Those same men, he told the court, had threatened to kill him in the gully, but they afterward decided that Bennett, should accompany them on the Hugh robbery. He got inside the house and woke up Wilby, who was visiting. This is how Bennett described the event leading up to Hugh's tragic and untimely death. Lukey asks the man who else was there, and he said that another man was in the other room. But in this house, sir, what I saw was not likely to be no robbery. What I saw in the house did not look like a robbery. If it were a robbery, I would not know what they were going for. The approach to me was that it was a robbery, but I did not think it was. But when I see some books on the law of Jamaica, that is the time I got to realize that is maybe someone from the council or bar or a lawyer or somebody living there. You get me? That's Bulgin giving his statement, give his deposition in court. See? All right. Moving on. He then took the man into the room which Mr. Hugh was. He then took the man into the room which Mr. Hugh was and began asking him for a book. Show me your passport. He was asking him for his book. Must be a passport book. I was wondering what's going on at this time. An old lady came upstairs afterwards and asked, what have my son done? And Lukey replied to her that your son is Fidel. He then put the old lady to sit down, and she was saying, Lord have mercy upon us, and things like that. He told her to stop making all that loud noise, and she said, what have he done? What have he done? He has done nothing, he replied to her. We get paid to kill him. He might go dead. Bennett, in his detailed unsworn statement, said he had nothing to do with Hugh's death, but the jury found otherwise and judged him guilty as charged. An appeal was lodged with the local court of appeal. The appellant was represented by Delroy Chuck, who filed and argued one main ground of appeal, that the learned trial judge failed to impress upon the jury that if, after a review of all the evidence, they are left in reasonable doubt as to the guilt of the accused, then they must acquit. In particular, the burden and standard of proof have not been properly explained and presented to the jury. The court held inter alia that the trial judge's direction, which emphasized to the jury that duty of the crown to satisfy them so that they feel sure that the accused had no such burden, and if they disbelieve or were in doubt they should not convict, is, in our view, adequate. The Court of Appeal noted that, in their view, the case for the appellant was defended on the basis that he was not part of the common design and had no intention to kill. He said that his companion had a gun. The Crown's case was that both had guns. The judgment continued. In view of the fact that no ground of appeal was filed relating to common design, the court nevertheless inquired of Mr. Chuck if he had any submission to make in that regard. He indicated that he had given such a ground of appeal some consideration, but had concluded that the Crown's case was overwhelming, as the appellant had put himself on the scene, and in the circumstances, any such submission would be a waste of time. In the result, the court concluded that on his own case, the appellant, Bennett, was aware, or ought to have been, that the plan was not robbery but murder. Despite this, he remained on guard and made no attempt to remove himself from the scene prior to the commission of the murder. In our judgment, he was clearly in this case a part of a common design, which was to execute Mr. Hugh. For these reasons, the application for a leave to appeal is refused, the Court of Appeal judge ruled. Seeing? Yeah, remember that period then, our history was when the man them kill a judge in a Rockfort. And me I tell you, say, yo, things get grimy, a way where it's like you can't trust the authority no more, and you have certain trigger happy and happy-go-lucky police will get immunity now from murder any suspect or any youth from in East Kingston where them considered a threat, and for any prospect of development from any youth that East Kingston during that time was totally stunted. You know, see, the police no want to recruit no youth from East Kingston. The highest you could have gone in an authority or civil service them time, a security guard. You know, see, or you go sweep road, or you go do the rubbish work on the rubbish truck them. You get what I say? That was one of the highest prospects for young youth. You know, see, you never really have no process, the acceptance never there for the East man too tough, worse given the previous history and thing. You don't know Hot Stepper, Tony Brown, Warwick Isle. You know, see, it's just relatively close behind that, because it's a 1987. We're talking about 7-8 years after that, the debacle. You know, see, Siaga still in a power, and you know, a whole heap of, boy, I tell you, I hope they either remember them the thing that stayed. You don't know. Give thanks, okay, and they have talked about it. You know, see, histories what we don't want to repeat to them youth. You know, see, and you don't know. You don't know, youth. More love, man. Share, like, and subscribe. That's the father.